Here at ACO Radio, American Communications Online, or any affiliated stations or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Can you hear me now? Jan?
There we go.
Okay, you had to call in. All right. So, can you hear me speaking okay?
This is a Mad.
Oh, hi, Matt.
And I can hear an echo. You got two of them open? No, I don't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me turn this down. This is really interesting. Okay, I'm going to turn my computer down, which is, I called in on
you're on a phone and on the computer. That's the problem.
Yeah, I didn't, but you couldn't hear me on the computer. So I don't know why that is. Has something to do with my new computer, I guess, Ahmed. Apologize for that. Well, let me see if
muted.
No, it wasn't. I have it muted now. Now I don't. So that's working fine. Let me see if I can get him on here, Ahmed. Let's see. Did Brian want to come on today?
I haven't talked to him.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
I've been too busy.
Okay. Well, I want to hear what all you've been doing and what all's going on over there.
Hello?
Let everybody know who you are. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Ahmed, can you hear him?
I sure can.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I guess my new computer. Jan, I apologize for earlier. I saw you. You just couldn't hear me. I don't know why that is, but I do have a new computer I'm using. I had to call in myself on my phone, so it could have something to do with the way it's all set up now. Well, I've invited Ahmed Painter, who is our general manager for our various groups in American Communications Online, and spending time and money to get us all set up before 2020. But, Jan, I gave a basic information intro on you with your 25 years in the military and 25 years with the post office, and then your project 1947. And can you explain, Ahmed, I need to get your name in here because this is a live recording, but it's live live radio, folks. So, Ahmed, tell people about what you're doing right now so we can get this on with Jan.
I'm just trying to learn.
Well,
I do various things on the internet. I run another radio station, Revolution Radio. I'm the general manager, and we've been doing, I've been awful busy trying to move the station, getting everything reset up and stuff, and I haven't been around the last month or so. But that'll change. I'll have more time to join in and help out here.
Okay, well, we appreciate anything you can do to help us out over here. And Jan has been with us. Jan, this is number 6, isn't it? Six,
Yeah, I believe so.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and put that in here, folks, for all of you that are keeping up with our oral history. Now, Jan, why don't you tell Ahmed and those listening how this got together with Project 1947 for CUFOs, FUFOR, F-U-F-O-R, and MUFON, which is now called the UFO Research Coalition. Can you give all of us, including me, a refresher course on what these acronyms are and how you got involved with your Project 1947 research? And I'll put this as Series 6.
So, my father passed away in 1993. And I got out of the military in 1994. And I was looking for something to do. And it'd been a while since I'd been in touch with the people at FUFOR, and I called Don Berliner, and we chatted. And I knew him from years before in the 60s at NICAP, so he told me that he gave me what was going on in the U.S. because I was pretty well out of it while I was in Europe. I kept up somewhat, but I wasn't. It wasn't a full-time thing. And he mentioned something about they were forming a research coalition, and that Robert Bigelow was going to give them a significant grant so they could run certain research programs. And I mentioned Well, that would be interesting. I wonder if anybody had taken Ted Blocher's 1947 research any further, and he said, well, yeah, it's all done. He was skeptical that anything else would be found, and he said, I think it's already been done, and so it would be a waste of time. So he said we wouldn't consider something like that. So I thought about it more and more, and I said, Ted did about 200 newspapers, but there's 11,000 in 1947 in North America, so I think there might be some more things to be found. So I had money from my retirement, and I also had leave that I'd saved up, so I got paid for that. So I said maybe I could run out to the West Coast and do some research in Washington and Oregon and Idaho, which were three of the big states at the beginning of the 1947 flap. So I was surprised at how easy it was to do this kind of research, because a number of the universities or historical societies had gathered up a large number of newspapers, historical newspapers, and had them on hand. So I visited the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho, and Blocher had already gone through the Boise, Idaho Statesman, so that was pretty well done. But I started going through other Idaho newspapers and found a lot of items that were only in the local newspaper. They didn't get out into the wire services, and they did not go much further than 50 miles radius from where they were. So they were basically unknown, and comparing it with what we had for 1947, I said, yeah, there's a lot of newspapers here. So I did the same thing in Washington and Oregon. I went to Seattle, and I visited the University of Washington and Seattle Library, and I went to Oregon and visited the Oregon State Library, which had lots of material on UFOs. Besides 1947, in the newspapers, there were already a lot of material that the librarians had indexed, and you could just go and find that. So it was all kinds of material from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and it was quite a surprise. So then I called Don up after that trip, and I said, I found several hundred new stories in the newspapers at that time in just those three states. And he said, we're forming a UFO research coalition. He said, send me some evidence and send me a grant proposal. So that's what I did. And in the meantime, I talked to Richard Hall, and he got a copy of the grant proposal too. And he said, well, I support this. He says, from what I've seen of the grant proposals so far, this is the most interesting. He said, this is the one I'll support. So I was told that the coalition supported that, and they decided to give me the money. So I'd asked for enough money so I could travel around to about I had figured about 24 states, but ended up being 50 states and Canadian provinces that I eventually went to, plus the Washington, D.C. And it was, I was able to do, with the help of a number of people that went and screened their local newspapers or went to state libraries and screened their newspapers at the state library, or had material in their own files. About 300 people did this because MUFON, CUFOS, and FUFOR put this out in their literature that they were looking for 1947 material. And we decided not to do just 1947. We decided to do from 1900 to 1965. And so things started coming in here, and it was a lot of material. It was huge amounts of material. And then I visited MUFON. I visited Richard Hall and looked at his files. I visited a number of people in the U.S. and Canada, copying things from their files. And I went out to CUFOS several times, and they had the old NICAP files, so that was fortunate, and I got to see that material. So that's how 1947 started. They did a preliminary report of that, where it was in two parts. One part was the history leading up to the flap, things that we had found out, and why the government reacted the way they did, then there was a part about sightings in sort of chronological order. Several people overseas, in Australia, France, Finland, and Sweden, wrote up little essays on their country's experience in 1947 with UFOs. Sweden had what was called the Ghost Rockets in 1946, so they actually had already in place a project to track unknown objects over the Swedish territories, and also get information from other countries around them. So the Klaus Svahn and Andrews Lilligen were able to send me items from the official government inquiry into UFOs, which probably started before our inquiry. A fellow in Finland had done research, and he wrote up his thing, and I included that as a paper. Several people in France had already looked into 1947 in France, so they submitted items, and I put them together in a narrative. And then Bill Chalker in Australia, he had also looked into this, so he had a thing. So we had several foreign views in the report. At the end of the year, Mr. Bigelow decided he would not want anything to do with the coalition anymore, and he said, I'm not going to support this any further. And I had hoped to have 3 years to do this research, but it didn't turn out that way. So I said, well, I'll just continue this on my own as best as I can. So that's basically what happened, and I've been doing that ever since. And I told Mr. Bigelow that I would start a website, and essentially what I found would be available to the public for free on my website, and that's not quite true because I'm overwhelmed with material. More than we can put on there.
Well, right now, is Francis Ridge still in charge of NICAP?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Is he helping any?
I just heard from him 10 minutes before we got on the air here.
Oh, wow. We got to get him to come on, too.
Yeah,
That'd
you
be
do.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I just haven't contacted him, but yeah, does he know you're trying to get everything archived? Well, he's still alive, so we have his number. I could bring him on. I don't know if he'd want to come on or not.
I think he would.
You do? Well, we'll just see. We'll just get a party going here. If I can get this. Let's see here. Gee, I'm having to, well, I should have wrote that number down, shouldn't I? I'll have to, Ahmad's much better at producing and programming and punching all these buttons, folks, and I'm trying to be ambidextrous here. I did used to twirl 2 batons at once, but I've got to write his number down here. And see, since you just talked to him, he knew you were coming on.
No, he didn't. We were talking about something else.
Oh, okay. Well, I wonder if he'll answer this new number in Indiana.
He might, yeah.
He's at Mount Vernon, Indiana.
Right.
Well, let me see if Ahmad, if I hang up, just keep talking for me, but I'm going to try to see if how this Jill. Now, I don't hope it doesn't cut you off since you're already. Ahmad, you don't know anything about all this call guest either, do you?
No, I don't know anything about Blog Talk.
Okay. I know you got the number to get in, but it's going to dial. Let's see if. Now we just say Mr.
Dialing.
Okay, we'll see if this works. First time I've had 2 people with this. His name is Francis Ridge. Now, did he start with you?
Hello, we are not available now.
Oh, they're not.
Please leave your name and phone number after the beep. We will return your call.
Hi, this is UFO Association, and I have Jan Aldrich, and we're live on the air with Thomas R. Becker and Theresa J. Morris, and we're leaving a number to see if you'd like to participate with us. We do a weekly oral archive for 2 hours a day on Tuesdays, so if you can, give Jan Aldrich, Theresa J. Morris, or Thomas R. Becker a ring back. My phone number is 850-376-9100, and I will get the Skype on to you for Ahmad Painter is AMAD PAINTER. Is that right, Ahmad? Ahmad Painter.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, Jan, he said he was just talking to you, so I hope that Francis Ridge gets this because we're very interested in coordinating your website with his and ours. So thank you very much, NICAP. Look forward to hearing from you. And you were called live on the air. Now, if I can figure out how to hang this up, I have no clue. Let me see. Let me see if that does it. Okay. I guess you guys can still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't want to end episode, just the call. All right. I think we're off of his line. And I hit end call anyway, and it didn't cut us off. Yay. All right. So now we know we've made contact, folks. Our group, UFO Association with American Communications Online. Theresa J. Morris, host and general manager and best co-host I've got, Thomas R. Becker, and he is of Georgia, and I am of Florida. Now, Jan Aldrich is in Connecticut. However, he's been on this huge quest for data and information and had some very important groups. We just called NICAP. Now, can you Jan, I don't know if you've got all these acronyms in front of you, but can you explain any data on NICAP, NICAP, and why they quit in 1980, but they didn't quit? So maybe you can explain why we just called Francis.
Okay, well, NICAP was formed in 1956 and then taken over by Donald E. Keough in 57 as director, and that organization continued until 1980, when essentially it merged with CUFOS. Now, about the same time that I'm starting on Project 1947, Francis Ridge is saying that, and he's talking to Dick Hall, and he says, we ought to do something to memorialize the work that NICAP did. And his idea was to use the trademark and the name and continue as an online entity. And so he asked CUFOS if they would let him use the name, and they were fine with that. So he started the website, and one of the things he does is he puts up a lot of NICAP material that he's had over the years, plus his own investigations, which he was a NICAP subcommittee chairman, investigative subcommittee in Indiana, and as NICAP, they did away with the subcommittees in about 1971-72. He went on to MUFON.
Sorry, that's Janet calling in. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Ahmad, can you get her? Ahmad's my Skype person. So.
Right.
I'm going to try and pull it on, right?
Yeah, please. I'm sure that's what she wants. Goodness, you're such a popular guy, Jan. What can I say?
So he went ahead and started NICAP, and one of the things that he's done is he has a number of essays by people in ufology on his site, plus he has a chronology going all the way back, and the actual case files, a lot of them from Blue Book that have been cleaned up so that they're more readable and people can use them easier on his site. So if you want to see what went on in, say, 1983, you can just go to his site, and there's summaries of significant UFO reports or histories in each year, and actual verbatim reports from various sources, a lot of them being in the 50s and 60s Project Blue Book.
Now, NICAP is for National
Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena.
And CUFOS is for Center
for UFO Studies, which is
all right.
Which is started by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who had been the Air Force advisor for almost 20 years. Now, if you watch the History Channel, you get a real skewed view of Dr. Hynek. And I keep trying to communicate with the History Channel. I said, you guys don't have to make up things about Hynek. He's a colorful character on his own, in his own right, and these fictional items of Dr. Hynek they're a waste of time. I said, tell the truth about the man. Let's see, one time he, in fact, this is in the Condon Committee report, not the thing about what I'm going to tell you that Hynek did, but Hynek interviewed this airline pilot. So he interviewed him at the Air Force Cambridge, Massachusetts facility up there, which is a scientific facility. And so he told the guy to report to this building, and then he had him put on he had somebody put a blindfold on him, walk him around the building so he's really disoriented, put him on the elevator and send him up, and then as he arrived on that floor, Hynek took off the blindfold. Now, if you don't think that's kind of funny, that's and he did that so that he didn't really know what branch of the Air Force scientific office that he was in, and so that's to me that's that's something that's never been told, and it's something that probably could have been told instead of some of the things that the fantastic things that supposedly Hynek did. He did do some rather unusual things. He went to South America, and he got himself in some trouble down there. He went. He was convinced to go way out in the countryside to meet with these people, and I think they weren't interested in UFOs. They were interested in shaking him down and getting his money and taking his stuff.
Aw. Now, what country was that?
So he was rescued by the taxi driver. The taxi driver didn't want to take him out into this place, so he hung around, and when things started to get bad, he and Hynek's buddy there, the taxi driver came by and picked him up in the taxi and drove him away. So this is some of the things that he had. He had some rather unusual experiences while he was in the Air Force and afterwards. And I'm sorry to see that the History Channel is not looking into these things, but making up their own fictional versions of what they think will appeal to the public. Like I say, this guy was a colorful character in his own right.
Yeah, it could be through the people that are producing our Prometheus Entertainment who they can get to show up. But Janet Carol Lesson, I believe, from Hawaii, has joined us with a Mad Painter. Janet, are you here? Did you want to say hi to Jan and Aldrich today?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm here. Thanks for pulling me on the show. Hi, Jan. How are you doing today?
Okay.
I missed the story you were saying about the person. I heard that story before, though, about the person who got rescued. All I got was the person got rescued by the cab driver.
Yeah, that was Hynek. That was Hynek. So what I was saying was that the History Channel's version of Hynek is highly fictional, but you don't have to have fictional things about Hynek, because he was a real colorful character and got involved in all kinds of things anyways. So why would you make up a whole bunch of stories and then at the end say, well, this is based on, and have 2 minutes about the UFO case?
Oh, my. So we need to have them talking reality because we're historians, and I met him, and you met him, right?
Yeah, so I keep they keep asking me to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they keep asking me to help them, and I keep telling them, why don't you just tell the truth about this guy? It's really interesting what actually happened. The truth is stranger than any fiction you guys can come up with.
Did you write down enough?
I get a series of Star Trek conferences. I went to a bunch of them in the early to mid 70s, to late 70s. Not sure exact years. But Hynek used to come with Heinlein, Asimov, and Roddenberry, and each conference had a panel, and then everybody could ask questions. It was a long panel, like 2-3 hours long. So he was quite an amazing person, very transparent, and the four of them made an amazing team. I know that Heinlein and Asimov fictionalized a lot that they knew, but they had to fictionalize it in order to present it. Because back then in the 70s and 60s, they weren't really free to convey that information. But I think Heinlein, I'll have to look this up, he was retired military. Anyway, so this information was coming out sideways back in those days. We've made a lot of advances, but still things are hidden. Anyway, next person.
Right. So we're, but we're not doing anybody a service by making up things when the material is right there. And I keep each time I get contacted by them, they want me to help them, and I can't be any part of that. I said, if you're going to, I can tell you things about Hynek, and you don't have to fictionalize it. You don't have to pump them up. You can just tell the true story about what happened. I was really upset about the fighter pilot that they, he supposedly went berserk and tried to murder somebody. I mean, this guy's this pilot was a patriot. Why do you have to do that kind of thing? Just to make the story seem a little more, put a little Hollywood spin on it. I don't understand that, and it really upsets me. So, and like I said, Hynek was involved in many things that aren't in Blue Book, but we know about because of Kufos and stuff and his papers and things like that.
Well, tell us some more that you knew.
Huh?
Tell us some more about J. Allen Hynek, because you know my story. I met him on an airplane, but I haven't told it in front of anybody yet. That would be one of the little things that we could talk about. But the reason J. Allen Hynek, you want to tell people why? Because we haven't really covered a lot about J. Allen Hynek, but he did start Center for UFO Studies, did he not?
Yes, he
Wasn't
did.
Yes,
he did. After the Air Force, he did start that, and he got quite a bit of response from around the world. Scientists all over the world were, sending him material, and it was a lot of people that had kept silent for years came forward, and told them of their experiences. He's also contacted, one thing because I just working on it the other day, the scientific advisor for the commander of the Indian Air Force contacted Hynek and said, "Yeah, we have the same thing happening over here with UFOs," and he sent him a case. So, and Hynek went and visited the Air Ministry several times in Great Britain. He visited in France. He went to Australia, and he went to Papua New Guinea, where Father Gill had made his sightings, and talked to some of the local witnesses there, and they told him how they figured out how far away the UFO was. And what they had done is they got some of the people from the village, and they told them, go walk away until we tell you to stop. And so the sighting in Papua New Guinea in 1959, it was a UFO out there, and there appeared to be people on the top there, and they were waving at Father Gill and his the people in his congregation. And so what they did is they had these people walk away until they looked the same size as the people they saw on the UFO. Then they went and measured the distance and said, well, these people were probably this far away from us. Not an exact thing, but it's kind of clever. It's kind of a clever mechanism. And one of the skeptics at the time said that, these are local natives, and they just went along with Father Gill, the white man, the great white father, and just went along with what he said, and there was no real UFO. It's just something that Father Gill made up, and these people went along with him. And that's racist politics getting into ufology. The people in Papua New Guinea at the time were agitating for their independence, and they had no use for outside missionaries coming in there. In fact, they had run some of them off, but Father Gill was a compassionate man that they recognized he was there to help them, and they were not there to support his made-up story. When they talked to Heineck, he said, we saw this. This is what we saw. This is how we figured out how tall these people were by sending them down the beach and seeing when they were. We did this. This wasn't a white man's idea. And so they were a little upset about, being said to, well, you guys just supported him because he's the great white father. And so that was really interesting. And Heineck went out there and talked to the people and took pictures and everything like that. So that was one of his adventures. He was able to talk to witnesses in the Australian Air Force afterwards. So he was, like I said, he was a very unusual man. He met with people all over, and was involved in some of the investigations, very careful investigations, of UFOs while he was in the Air Force and out of the Air Force. And the Center for UFO Studies still goes on. And I had, just with Barry Greenwood, he and I had both gone out there and scanned a large number of their files. And they have huge numbers of filing cabinets. I'd say at least 20 filing cabinets, so you 3 drawers each. And that's just one organization like that. Of course, MUFON has huge amounts of material that I've seen. I went to MUFON, and that's years ago. That's about 40 years ago. So now what they have now is got to be huge. And I visited people that have their own files, which in some cases are just on the same scale as CUFOS or MUFON. So there's a lot of information if we could ever get somebody to take a serious look at it. It's not just minor stuff, and it's material that has been thoroughly investigated, and it's just sitting there in files. Of course, with the current way things are going, it's hard to keep an organization together, because it used to be you had some kind of a bulletin that you put out. But the way things go with social media now, it's hard to keep an organization going, because if you put out a bulletin, somebody scans it, puts it on the internet, so the possibility of getting any income from that is almost nil.
Right. So this is the way that they've got it set up now, with the larger corporations running the internet in social media.
Right.
So Google, Amazon, and Facebook is very much in the news in today's. And I heard that the YouTube was going to start getting rid of a lot of their YouTubes if they're not profitable, and I saw something in the news today on that. So it's all about who can keep the internet thriving, like it used to be ABC, NBC, and CBS. But now they have 5 majors, and I've noticed that they have the one with, they'll each have a major franchise. I was talking to Janet about that. If you know, Orville is about space, and then we have Star Trek, and then Stargate. Was it MGM? But one of them, they're wanting to know right now, they're running asking people, do they think it should be on Amazon or Netflix or Hulu? So it changes. By the time you think you've got everything figured out, the companies that have been making all the money on the top, that have the investors, there's no room for the people on the bottom, the grassroots people. And right now, I'm paying out a little over $300 a month just for myself, just for helping and assisting, keeping radio and what we're doing together. So the archives, we need to pay for another server or whatever. I don't know what we're going to do. But my archives have been kept on Blog Talk, so that only costs me $40 a month for archiving there. The rest is for distribution purposes, so I can get people to know that we exist. Now, how do you do it? Because you have Project 1947 that you own, don't you? You pay for it yourself?
Yes. I haven't paid for it lately because somebody always sends in the rent before I get a chance to. So.
Oh, well, that must not be very much, but that's your archives, right?
That's part of my archives. Like I said, it's too much to keep up with. As far as putting, we have a large amount of material, and from a pretty good number of contributors around the world. Keith Basterfield and Bill Chalker, they both have material on my site. My webmaster is in Australia, so he volunteers for this. I mean, he doesn't get paid. For a while, we sold some books. That's why it's 1947.com. But we haven't sold anything in a while. And that was never really profitable. It was more like a service or thing. So.
And now we got CUFOs, but those people are all retiring, and now you're saying we need to copy all those files. And you've got a scanner, and Barry Greenwood has how many scanners does CUFOs have together in Chicago, or for that association?
Well, there's things going on with CUFOs that they think they can preserve all their material.
Oh, that's good.
So, but some of it's up in the air right now, and quite frankly, in the lap of the gods. So.
Well, Greg Brady's reporting on some Buddhists that have feel like that their stuff, all their hard copy and their books are going to be, scanned. So he was very shocked when he went to find out this old Buddhist temple, and inside they had Apple computers and scanners. And he said, "What are y'all doing? All this equipment?" And they told him it was because they're going to put it all on, get it all ready for archiving and to put it on the internet. So that's a good thing. These are things that are really, really old that were saved. So that's exciting. They even had a copy of the Book of Thomas. So I'm excited about that. So this is something with the UFO business that needs to be done. Now, you've been with this. Is this affiliation that you said Robert Bigelow chose to pull himself out of that? You think because of the cost, or did he tell you why he was pulling back on the archiving?
He's never communicated with me. I learned from other people that he didn't think my project was worthwhile. So he has his own ideas about how things should be done.
Okay.
Richard Hall did the second volume of the UFO evidence, and he financed that too. But he didn't make the decisions about what was going to be done. The coalition made the decisions. So he didn't, much like Volume 2 of the UFO evidence, he said, I've had this studied, and it's not going to make any money. Well, he was right. It didn't really make any money, but the information is out there. That's a big thing right there. So, to a certain extent, a lot of people aren't interested in reading about UFOs. They're interested about reading about speculation about UFOs. So
more of the mystery and intrigue rather than the actual history.
Yeah, or just listening to people who have weird tales to tell, and there's no investigation to back them up, but they have interesting tales, so people decide that's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear about what's going on.
So the history of the prior UFO reports, regardless of what kind of anomalous phenomena it was, which is UAP these days, unidentified anomalous phenomena, seems to be taking over, but at the same time, they want to know not just what the vehicles are, since Bob Lazar, right, 1989 came out, because I thought it was all over with. They want to know who's flying these things and why are they visiting. Would you say that's more of what and why is it in people's minds? And whether they're meeting them or they're making them up, or who knows, but that's what we've got to. How are we supposed to scientifically prove this stuff? It's not like they leave you a toothbrush or a UFO behind. I know personally.
There's very little material that you can analyze or do stuff with.
So scientific
and of course,
and empirical data.
We're more or less cut off from things like radar and other sensors like that, because the government controls those things, or private scientific organizations or private people control them. So it's hard to do things with these things unless people are going to cooperate with you.
Well, Janet has been working with experiencers, but she and I put in years ago.
I don't know if anybody remembers the old Moonwatch. Moonwatch. Okay, so when they first started sending satellites up, they had people that would try to track them. They had telescopes and other means of tracking them visually.
Okay.
And many of them were scientists. And, of course, Hynek was in charge of that.
Oh. What day did he start that?
So it started in '56 before anything was ever set up, but the network was already set up worldwide before the first satellite went up. So the material is at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. So Michael Swords went down there and looked, and he's looking for, now he's not looking for satellite tracking, but he's looking for anything anomalous that these people had seen. Now, Hynek said early in the project, we didn't detect anything that looks like UFOs. And he said almost as those words were out of his mouth, because he told Captain Ruppelt, who was updating his book at the time, almost as soon as the words came out of his mouth, it was proven that that's wrong. So there were things that were being seen by the satellite trackers that were anomalous. And he said later, I had to eat my words.
Well, go ahead, Jan. Finish that, and then I'm going to ask Matt and Janet to help us out here. But I've got an idea.
What happened is these things were recorded, and they're in an archives that nobody looks at anymore. And so Dr. Michael Swords went down to the Smithsonian and went through the archives and made copies, and so now we have incidents of satellite tracking that are not satellites. They're in fact UFOs. So that's.
So where are we keeping that? I've recently seen something like that myself.
Swords has it at his home. It's being kept by CUFOS actually. So since he's
Satellite Visions.
Yeah, so he has that at his home. I think we scanned that. Yeah, I think we did scan that. Yeah. So we did scan some of the anomalous ones.
Well,
we've been working
satellites.
on this. We're trying. We're trying to work on this and other things. I mean,
well, it's important. It's history, and some people it's like genealogy. Some people care about their family heritage, and some don't.
Right.
And it's not something we can make people be interested in. It just happens to be something that Janet, Ahmad, and I are. Now, Brian Rue said he could come on, Ahmad, but that's up to you. He says he's going to Skype you. Brian knows you're on, Jan. He's very also interested. He's a Canadian that had the UFO Association that had Richard Dolan stay there, and he knows Alfred Lambermont Weber lives right there around him. But this is the one thing that he's very much interested in. And Ahmad Painter is his producer for his show. But we're all doing our best to try to keep the UFO business out there. But there's so many people out there doing exactly what we're doing. But I want to mention that we've been keeping archives since we brought Stanton T. Friedman on this one, TJ Morse ET Radio, in June 2012. And, of course, he's passed now, but he was very much a name and figure of being out there and doing marketing and promotion on mainly the Roswell and then the Majestic 12 files. Now, Bob Lazar, I wanted to talk to you about this, and I'm sure Mad would be interested in participating, and Janet. I would like to ask you if you, even though you're centered your project on 1947, with the Roswell beginning there, and a lot of kids don't understand that, but I do. But I'm sure we could come up with some decent questions. But Bob Lazar was given a Majestic. Now, when I was given clearance level, And that was MAJ. You may have been around people like that. They had it on their badges. But we have different words for different clearance levels, which you will know. Do you remember anything about the Bob Lazar story in '89 at S4 down below Area 51? Because I want to market and promote that area of the country and that story as well. Do you have any data on that?
You're not going to like what I have to say about Bob Lazar. It's pretty well proven that he is a hoaxer.
Really?
Really. So, now, when Bob Lazar started his story, they had not made Element 115 yet. Element 115 was supposed to be a non-radioactive element. It was called Island of Quietude, or it was supposed to be non-radioactive, and this was supposed to be the fuel of his UFO, and he walked around with Element 115 on his person. Now we know what Element 115 looks like and what it does. It's highly radioactive. It's very dangerous. You don't walk around with it. If you do, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead.
Well, it may be.
Nobody wants to talk about this. This is something scientific that can be proved, but the story is so good that they want to keep it alive. It's so
tell
wonderful.
me what you know, and I'll tell you what I know, because it's a mass number, but they've changed it because we didn't have it in the table at that time.
Yes, we didn't have it, but it was thought theoretically that it was within this island of stability, which, that's, I saw a UFO and this is what they use, and 115 is just like they say it's an island of stability. No, it wasn't. That theory is wrong, and now we know that it's not an island of stability, and you don't go walking around with that on your person. And if you do, you're dead. So Lazar is not dead, but he tells a good story. So, before there was even 115. Most people had written him off as a hoaxer, and he kept trying to come back. And his benefactors kept trying to relaunch his story again, and until just recently with the Tic Tac material. He had failed several times to make a comeback, but nothing in ufology ever goes away. It doesn't matter how screwy it is.
Well, let's look at that.
Lazar is back again. He's back again, and he's managed to return to the field, even though he should be dead, because 115 is highly radioactive. You don't walk around with it on your person.
Well, there's another side to that too, but what type
of
research did you do on it?
It's a physical phenomena that is demonstrated because we have made Element 115. It's highly radioactive. You don't walk around with it. What's the other side to that? The other side is what? That you don't believe the scientists, that you don't believe that Element 115 is highly radioactive?
Well, at one time, there was no number 115, 16, 17, or 18.
Yes, we made it, so now we know what it's like.
Well, actually, there's another story out there. And that
of course there is, because we have to have Bob Lazar back again. So we're going to make another story about him.
We have various other things we've added, man-made elements, right? But what happened was, with the UFO story that I happen to know about, we had been given something that we could make very little of because it was given to us with a spacecraft. Now, this I know from my husband's story. I didn't shoot at it, but my husband did. And when he was working for the Army and working for President Reagan, he told me that working with these beings, they would not give us this element. It wasn't of Earth. However, they showed us how to do this little bit, and whatever we wanted to call it. What were they calling it? Panupnium, or they had several names. But at the time when I learned about it, there was no such word. So I learned about it before, and they said they were trying to put it with, well, I guess it's like cold fusion, but there's this, like you said, this element of stability where it is stable. You can use it. And my husband kept saying it was in everything. It was like atoms in everything. So when I learned about it back in the time that I was going to Las Vegas. And I thought when Bob Lazar let the story out, it was all over. I thought everybody would know and accept it because I knew about the experiments, but also that the extraterrestrials would not give us this other element. So my side of the story is that it is the fact that it was used for exactly what he was trying to reverse engineer, because my husband was working on a project as well. And you know there was more than one. There was at least 9 at the time in S4. So I had one of those stubs just like he did. It looked just like that from the U.S. Navy. So to me, it's easy to believe, but then I have information. So I don't know how we're going to do this because the government wasn't sure he still had any on him or whatever, or took a little piece. And I don't know, do you think he said that? Did he state that on video? Is that what happened?
Yeah,
to Bob
sure
Lazar?
he does. And he's been to jail too. So I mean, he's a real good source.
Well, at the time he did work at Los Alamos. My uncle worked at Los Alamos.
Yes,
it's hard to prove.
I went up to Los Alamos and saw his name in the phone directory. So yes, he was at Los Alamos.
Okay, and the reason he went to jail was helping somebody that he shouldn't have get one of those legal whorehouses going, right?
No, it wasn't a legal whorehouse. It was an illegal whorehouse, and
in Nevada.
And I think if you the record is there for ufologists. They don't want to read it because they like the story better than they like the truth.
Well,
the material is in the newspapers.
Well, what about George Knapp? He did a pretty good job. And what's the other guy, Jeremy Corbell?
They're promoters. They've been promoting him from the beginning. They're promoting him. And Stan Friedman said he is a hoaxer.
Yeah, Stan said that
Stan was pretty vehement about how he was hoaxing people.
But when it came to Majestic 12, he didn't consider hoaxers.
Right, but
and you've seen Linda Moulton Howe has one of the books, right? I had one of the books.
I don't believe it. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen the military make.
Well, when I've been with groups, we had to make our own. So when you make your own products, but in that, but it doesn't tell you. Okay, if you've got the SOM 101, it's supposed to tell people. It's supposed to tell people how to recover a UFO. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you how to do that. Well,
it is a complete fraud. Now, I'm saying that because I know how to analyze military manuals. That's one of the things that I did. It's improperly marked for classified material. I know how that works. This comes right into my expertise.
Your wheelhouse?
Yeah, so it comes right into my wheelhouse. So Stan and I had big arguments over whether that was authentic or not. It's a hoax. It doesn't tell anybody how to. If you needed to go out and recover a UFO, it doesn't tell you how to do it.
Yeah, well, we didn't have to know.
It doesn't tell you what happens if you get hazardous material, liquid material. It doesn't say a thing about liquid material. It doesn't tell you how to do the job.
I haven't seen it in years and years. I haven't seen it in years and years, and the only time I ever discussed it was with Stanton Friedman, and then one of the
like
John Wood's son.
And like I said about Lazar, Stanton Friedman, and Corbell, he had a big argument with Corbell about this, and he said that he was adamant that Lazar was a fake and a phony.
Huh. Well, Brian Riz joined us from Canada, and he's a UFO researcher as well. Brian, this is Jan Aldrich. Are you familiar with him?
No. Hi. Good to meet you for the first time.
Hi.
Yeah, I asked Brian to come on
because
because
talk a bit about Bob Lazar if you want.
I'm sorry.
Or I could comment on Bob Lazar if you want. I had a big UFO meetup group here I started 10 years ago, and that time we thought Bob Lazar was a fake, but it's only in the last year we decided, at least I feel, that he's actually authentic for a few reasons. Like, it seems like Stanton Friedman had a problem with Bob Lazar, but he did state there was element 115 way back in like 1989, and it's only in recent years they decided there actually is an element 115. And he predicted times when there would be tests of like flying saucer tests out of Area 51, and John Lear confirmed that. I guess, of course, there's this documentary just came out about him months ago, and Richard Dolan is now saying Bob Lazar is actually a legitimate whistleblower. So I think I was wrong about him 10 years ago. We used to make fun about him and joke about him, but now I actually think he was legitimate.
Well, I'd have to disagree with you on that. Element 115, Lazar didn't say that there was an element 115. He was following the physics theories of the day, and he claimed that 115 was a more or less a harmless item, and that he actually had it in his hands, and he was able to walk around with it, and it's highly radioactive, and you don't get to walk around with it. You get to be killed if you do. It's produced in very small quantities, but we know what the properties are now, and it does not have anything to do with what the ideas of the times were, say, in the 80s or before then. It is those theories have been proven false, and it's radioactive just like every other element that has been artificially created from plutonium on up. It's very dangerous.
It's going to be very interesting to see how my story plays out in all of this. But I'm
we're talking about Canada.
Yeah, Canada is.
Do you know Chris Rakowski?
Well, I know about him, but I've never actually interviewed him. I want to get him on my show once. He's thinking Winnipeg, right? He's got a big UFO information clearinghouse there. He's been around for a long time.
Yes. He is giving all his material to the University of Manitoba.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
That's good to know. Yeah, and what Jan
they're going to try to scan it and archive it there. Of course, one of the things that's interesting about him is that he has interaction with the Canadian government, so he gets things from the RCMP and the Defense Force and the service reports, the communications instruction for vital intelligence sightings. he gets those things from the Canadian government also. So these things will all be going to the University of Manitoba. It will be plus his huge collection of material that he's investigated himself over the years.
Well, Jan, how could Brian help us? He's had he used to have one of the largest UFO groups in Canada, but now he's on the west side. Now, is that correct, Brian? Or are you over on the Brunswick
I'm in
side?
Vancouver. And
Vancouver.
A woman just we've got a new Vancouver UFO meetup just started a few months ago. A woman, Mimi Nelson, she's an abductee. I did a video with her, 2 hours of her experiences on my BitChute channel. So the UFO meetup is back up now in Vancouver. It started
Great.
again.
Congratulations. So are you one of the people that instigated that in Vancouver? Or you were showing support?
No. Well, I joined it. I know Mimi Nelson. She started it, so I joined it, and I helped get Desta Barnaby as a guest speaker. She works closely with Grant Cameron. She's like his main assistant, so she came as our guest speaker for a couple of talks. Yeah, so it's going well. Yeah.
Well, let's ask Jan. Jan, you know Grant Cameron. How do you feel about Grant over there? He's in Canada, right?
Yeah, he's been here in Vancouver. He once was at a 10-hour meeting with us here in a house. This is 2017. Yeah, I follow his YouTube channel a lot. White House UFO. Yeah, I've been following him for quite a while. I think he's got really high quality stuff. He's perhaps our best ufologist in Canada after Stanton Friedman died. And I like his whole approach at it. It's about the experiencers and it's about the consciousness. He said it. In the past, he used to think about UFOs more in terms of nuts and bolts, but now we realize it's more about consciousness and have a Buddhist worldview. So we think of one type of UFOs could be like devas or interdimensional beings, which is part of Buddhist cosmology. So I really like Grant Cameron's work. Sure.
Jan, is there any way
have you been out to the East Coast at all to? Stan Friedman has given his material to the
University of New Brunswick. He lives
New
like
Brunswick.
4,000 miles away, and I've never been on the east coast of Canada. I've never been that far out. Like he lived right by Maine. He's an American in Maine, and so he went across the border to New Brunswick. So he's like a dual citizen. Yeah, so he's donated his stuff to the local university there, I guess.
Yeah, they're talking about they need help. I guess
Grant Cameron spent days going through his stuff. Like Grant Cameron was allowed. He's done videos about going through Stanton Friedman's files.
Right.
So he can afford to go back and forth. Apparently, that's a long jet ride across Canada, isn't it? Quite a long ride. Well,
I
Brian,
had never been to the East Coast either. I'd gone out to Vancouver, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and that when I was Project 47, I visited the local archives. So I never got out to the East Coast, which is kind of unfortunate because there's a lot of interesting material on the East Coast. They're claiming that they don't have all the material yet. It's still more coming, so it must be a huge archives.
So Jan, how do you see Brian with Canada? Now, Mad is he's our GM and our producer for both channels, or I don't know what you want to say, various brands, I guess, like MUFON, CUFOS. We have those in radios, right, radio channels. So, but Brian has his own show, and how do you see Canada? And he wants to keep up some UFO shows as well. I don't know any other topics that Brian does, but I know he does UFOs, and he was introduced to me through Ahmad, my GM, who's right here with us. But do you see any way in Canada there's a way that he could work with what we're doing here and getting all these associations together with your oral reports or bringing other people?
one of the things that Hynek said, Canada has more UFO reports per capita than the United States does. It seems that the further north you are, the more you see UFOs.
That's true.
I heard the same thing from Klaus Svahn. He said the further north you go in Sweden, the better the reports come, and the more
Has anybody
reports
looked
you
into
get.
that? Has anyone looked into
I think
that?
that's true.
Well,
like
Hynek
there's the
did.
big Alaska UFO case and the Yukon UFO case. Stanton Friedman told me it's one of the top 10 best research cases. I think maybe they've let their guard down up north since the population is so sparse they don't mind exposing themselves. That's just my theory about it. But yeah, some incredible UFO sightings. Like people in Yukon, Whitehorse, they see them more than we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and they from what I saw when I was doing Project 47 up there, they're more interesting. They're close approaches and unusual actions and things like that. They're not far away. They're close up to the witness. And like I said, Klaus Svahn in Sweden, he has the same experience. That it seems the further north you go, the better the reports come, and maybe it's because just everybody's more independent, and they don't care what anybody says to them. They're gonna do what they're gonna do.
That could be a factor, yeah.
I did meet John Musgraves in Canada, and he did a project for the Canadian government collecting UFO reports from Canada, all over Canada, and he went to all the UFO organizations in Canada he could go to, and also in the United States. He stopped at NICAP, he stopped at the APRO and MUFON and collected UFO reports from Canada from all those places. It's unfortunate. I think his collection may have been lost. I don't know. I wonder if you know anything about that.
Well, I've got a book right here on UFO cases in Canada. I could just look it up. I'm also... I know UFO BC here in BC, they cover cases for British Columbia and the Yukon. There's a group here. And they got a website, ufobc.ca, and they go back like over a century of cases found here. I'm just going to look at this book right now. I've got UFO stories in.
Well, Musgroves wrote a book that's called, I think it was called UFO Creatures, because he was interested in... he was sort of interested in occupant reports, so he did his own book. He got I think it was $10,000 grant from the Canadian government to pursue this research.
He's looking it up in the book for.
Right. The other experience I had in Canada was. A man named McDonald, who was a television producer, wanted to get support for doing a documentary on Shag Harbor, and he asked me to write a historical reason for doing such. And I said, well, what difference would that make? And he said, well, you're an outside you're an outside authority. You're somebody outside of Canada, and the people that are going to support this is going to be the Canadian broadcasters. The government will support this if I get enough reason to produce it. So I guess he interviewed about 20 people on Shag Harbor, and so that was they looked at his interview, so that was enough to get support so he could finish his documentary. I understand it was shown Canadian-wide.
Yeah, it's saying Canadians have an inferiority complex. We need Americans to confirm what we're doing before we think it's valid.
Well, I don't think my little letter to the Canadian government had much influence. I think his research and bringing all these, and he did talk to people in the RCMP, so bringing all this research together, and it was very compelling. I think that's why they decided that they would do it. I don't think my letter had much of any influence.
Okay. I think it's maybe the most important case in Canadian history. And one of the witnesses, I was teaching courses on UFOs about 10 years ago, like a local community center, a one-night course on UFOs. And one of the witnesses from Shag Harbor came. He saw it with his brother and two cousins. He saw UFO coming in the harbor, the bay there, going around in circles. Just a really profound experience, And I found the book I was looking for. It's called UFO Sightings in Canada, True Stories, Strange Encounters, and Cover-Ups. But this is by Lisa Wojna, Wojna. So it's not the same author you're mentioning about Canadian cases.
Right. Musgroves wrote a book. It's called, I think, UFO Creatures.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was from Canadian government. That was a Canadian government grant also. So that was it was interesting that the government supports this kind of material, this kind of research. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm sure they're maintaining a lot of secrecy. So on one hand, they're supporting research, but they're not telling us the truth. Just like the American government, I guess we're very much under the same control as the American government.
Right.
Now, my big interest is the relationship between governments and aliens, and are they actually working together? What's the evidence for that? And the secret space program or the back engineered technology that people already have, and what's the government's relationship with that and with aliens? Because it affects our whole political structure. Like what's above the political structure that we're told on the news? It seems like it's just a shell game, a distraction, but what's really going on relates to the higher technology of these black budget programs and back-engineered UFOs, don't you think? Don't you think that's like a big issue?
Well, what I know Chris Rakowski told me years ago that he was getting reports from the Canadian government, and he said at the time, keep this under your hat. It's not for general knowledge. And I said, okay. So I've never said anything until now. Until he's saying, well, I'm sending my collection to University of Manitoba, and I said, well, what about the government reports? And he says they're going too. And I said, well, that's excellent. That's excellent. I said, I guess I don't have to keep quiet about this. And he said, oh, no. Years ago, I started telling people about this. So I didn't know that. But
well, how do we keep in touch with each other that way? How would you know, right? And you guys don't email every day or get on Facebook every day. So what is the correct way to keep this open source for people? That's the whole thing, is information disclosure, is it not?
Yeah.
Jan?
Right. He told me that I think they wanted these things archived, and they gave him the material to archive, and that's what he's done. And now that he's getting ready to finish with it, he's giving it to the University of Manitoba, and they want to scan it and put it online, and they figure they need about $25,000 to do that. So there's two big collections in Canada right now that are probably really important for the world of ufology is Chris Rakowski and Stan Freeman. I think from what I know a little bit about Chris when I went to visit him, his will be in excellent order and everything will be quite organized, and Stan's will be a mass of things that will take months and months to get it in some kind of order where it can be used by the public. But it's these are two huge archives.
Okay.
That will be of interest to a lot of people, and I think it should. If some of the things I've heard about Canadian government reports, they may have really interesting things going on there, and of course, Stan. People writing to Stan all the time, so he probably has a giant archives, even though he seemed to be only mainly concerned with Roswell. But I know people that have sent him material, and Lauren Gross got to look at his, when he was in California, Lauren Gross got to look at his material. He said Stan was very cooperative with him and let him look at anything he wanted to when he was writing his books. So Lauren told me, he said, yeah, he was excellent source of material, and he had huge archives even before he got interested in Roswell.
Oh yeah, because he'd been doing it for years with his him reading the same book you did, I think, didn't he? He read the Kehoe book, Donald Kehoe's book, and I used to know that because he told me several times, but he also used to write to me, and wished I had all his emails. I guess I could find them. I should do that.
I had him on my show once. I had him on about a year before he died, and he said, we can do it again, let's do it again. But then I was going to call him back, and then he died. I didn't call him back,
Yeah, well.
We did over an hour-long show, so I'm glad I've got that on video. It's on my BitChute channel.
Yeah, see, what happens with most people like that is they die and all their stuff gets thrown out. So this will be a good thing if they're preserved by a university or the government in New Brunswick. That'll be great.
Yeah. It's like when Dr. Ed Mitchell died, it seems some of his papers got accidentally released, like the memo that got released a few months ago, which caused a big stir. So that seems to be maybe something that he didn't intend to release, but after his death it got released. So that was quite good for us. The Admiral Wilson memo.
I talked to I said this last time, so I don't really need to go into it real. I talked to a meteor tracer, and he said that's the problem with all our material, too. It's all in the landfill.
Yeah, tracers, we were wanting you to explain more about that word because, it can mean different things to different people. I'm into epistemology, but the history of words alone, we could do hours on just the words we use. Now, in ufology, are there any other words? Alienology would be the study of those flying these crafts, and then there's those that are, I've seen them come out that are not flown there. I guess like drones now, I told you about that over Rochester, the white, very low light, and it's just huge, and then two red lights come up and flash, one towards the lakes or north and one south. So I realize those were probably drones. it took me this long to find a word, but at that time when people see things, it's hard to document it when you don't really know what you're talking about, and that's firsthand, if you know what I mean. And it's very hard to this kind of work, and so I really kudos to anybody that does this type of writing or speculating even. But when you're trying to get hard copy, that's still Jan. Maybe me and you and Brian, while we're here, do we have a form we want to use for people? Just, the who, what, when, where, why, of course, but do you have any equipment in ufology that you would like to share with people, or anything for those listening that may want to get into ufology? Because not everybody wants to join groups, but at the same time we're doing this free. And we're pulling all the associations together, whether they're in a coalition or not, based on the fact that we're getting old, folks, and the 20-year-olds are going to have to come in. But what do you suggest? A form in emails, or can you go to Project 1947 and fill out a form? We don't have one right now.
There's a thing about investigating UFOs on my site.
Okay, let me go
I use either the CUFOS or the MUFON questionnaire. Those seem to be adequate to me. MUFON's got questionnaires on radar, if somebody's a radar operator, or some of the other more refined things. So to me, those are fine. I can't see anything beyond that. When I do interviews, I kind of do interviews. Remember, when I was doing interviews, it was 1947 was a long way away for some people. We tried to, when I questioned them about the dates, they would a lot of times be very not sure of the dates, and so one of the things we used to do is ask them, well, was it around the 4th of July, or was it around your birthday, or?
That's a good idea.
People would say, oh yeah, it was around my birthday, but it wasn't in 1947. It was in 1950 now, because I moved from this place to this place, and I was just getting started in it, so it's got to be 1950 because that's when we moved. So then
mental markers.
Yeah, mental markers, and where were they at the time? Is there anything else that you can use to pin these things down? And sometimes you don't get the results that you want. Like I said, I thought I had a real nice sighting from 1947, and it turned out to be 1950, and you got to use your imagination on that, and you need to establish confidence too. I talked to this fellow at Holloman. He had been in Holloman in 1955, and he had a UFO sighting not on the base, but when he was away from the base, and he had said nothing about it to anybody, including the official down there. It happened in Oro Grande, and he told me he had been, he was an officer, and he had been the adjutant there. And I told him, oh, adjutant? I said, well, I'd been an adjutant myself. I said, I was one of the few people, there was an enlisted man that had been an adjutant. That's almost never happened. And he says, oh, my God, no, it never happens. How was that? So then he was so curious about how I got to be an adjutant that I was able to gain his confidence by telling him, well, the colonel that I worked for knew that I had just been on a project that I knew something about, so we were deactivating the unit, so he said, well, you know how this deactivation works. He said, it's nothing foreign to you, so he says, I'll just appoint you as an adjutant for this particular item. And everybody saying, oh, you can't do that. He's an enlisted man. You can't do that. And the colonel said, yes, I can. It's in the regulation. It's unusual, but we'll do it. So I talked to the witness who it was a very close range sighting. He was going to Oro Grande. He was going through Oro Grande, New Mexico. He was on his way to El Paso, and it's at night. And off the road, he sees a UFO in the field, and he pulls off to the side of the road, and he's climbing the fence to go there, and as soon as he gets across the fence, the thing zooms away. He said, I never told anybody. He said, I didn't tell people about it at all. I didn't tell my superiors. I didn't report it. And he said, I didn't tell anybody to you. And so that was... and that's, like I said, it's gaining the confidence of the people, so they feel comfortable talking. Because some people are really, really embarrassed by having such an experience. They don't like to talk about it.
Matt, do you have any questions for Jan? Because you've been awfully quiet. But, with regards to building this?
I've been multitasking.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, what do you think? We should put a contact form, I guess, and then we can be like a clearinghouse and send them to Canada, to Brian, or send them to Jan and Connecticut. They're on different sides of the world, but what type of...
It wouldn't be a bad idea to put some kind of form on the sites, and then let people either email them to either one of them.
Right. Okay. At least do that, and I guess a contact form. Would that be just a contact, and then you guys could, decide? Or we may. I know another person was wanting me to put a form on here, but. Yeah, when you got a radio show and you got a website.
A lot of people would fill out a form if they could be anonymous, but
Yeah, but I don't know how much that would.
Yeah, you could. You don't know how many people would just fill it out to be jokers.
Filling out, yeah.
Yes,
so,
right.
So we might as well have them put who they are and all of that. So. Are there any events you're going to be speaking at, Jan? There's various events coming up here in the United States of America on both sides, East and West Coast. Are you putting in as a speaker, or did we establish that maybe we established last week you don't want to be a speaker? I forget because you're doing
I don't mind
hands-on.
being a speaker, but like I said, people don't want to hear what I have to say, so that's fine. As far as anonymous, it's pretty bad when you have a real important sighting and the person doesn't want to be identified, and that's not really anonymous. It's just you're keeping his name confidential. I had. We did a story about the 1952 sighting on the aircraft carrier Philippine Sea off of Korea in February of '52, and we were able to make contact with one of the people that worked in the CIC. He's actually one of the major officers on board at the time. He was in the Combat Information Center, which is the heart of the ship, and they had several sightings, and if you go to my site, I talk about the Philippine Sea in there. And for the Navy in Korea, it was during the Korean War. This was the time when they were convinced, this sighting convinced them that there was something to UFOs in Korea, and they started collecting material. Fortunately, the Air Force, in meetings with naval officers, intelligence officers, had been collecting things that the Navy had told them about. So, but the Navy was convinced that everything they were talking about was because of radar or because of misidentifications, visual misidentifications. When they got one that was both radar and and visual, that made them sit up and take notice. So, I mean, I said, well, this guy could be telling us a story. But he told us about his background. And then I was able to go to the Navy, all services, they have a book about regular officers and what their qualifications are and what schools they've been to and their achievements. And so he told me the schools he had been to. I could look those up and see that he had been to them, and that he was a unique officer on the ship there. He had taken courses that none of the other CIC officers had taken. He had all these qualifications. Plus, he was a pilot, and he flew all kinds of different Navy planes, and I was able to trace his assignments and everything. And so I'm convinced that he's who he said he was, and then he showed us documents, which, of course, supported that. So that was very gratifying, even though I can't use his name. I really worked to get to verify that he was who he said he was.
All right. Well, I put a contact form on UFOassociation.org for everybody, and we'll put Brian's link and Jan's link on this UFO Association for Canada and the USA. And Ahmed and I are strictly administrators on this particular show and website. It's UFOassociation.org. I pay for it monthly, and it's less than $20 a month. But when you put all of them together, it can be quite. But I pay for an extra secure socket on it, so it gets up there, folks. But if you'd like to, we'll sign you up. We've got journalists, scientists, cosmologists, physicists, phenomenologists, alienologists, UFO historians. Of course, Authors Book Club, UFO Secret Space Command for our Facebook group, researchers, and we're going to grow this for 2020. I've not been in a hurry because I knew it was going to require so much of my time, probably 50% of it, because it's a big business now, and we have a lot of events out there. So if you have an event, let us know. We're going to do our best to put together a UFO Association directory, and of course, Jan Aldrich is right up there on the top because he was our first, next to Stanton Friedman and Dr. Bruce Maccabee and Dr. Bruce Cornett. So we welcome anybody and everybody, including Brian Rue of Canada, that's not new to the UFO world, and that's why he was invited. He's also got a show. Brian, tell people about your show in Canada, please. We've got about 7 minutes left, and I'm going to let Jan say where to get in touch with him.
Well, okay, my show starts in 7 minutes on Revolution Radio. It's the Brian Rue Show every Tuesday night from 6 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. And I also have a YouTube talk show. I'm on YouTube, but mainly on BitChute since of YouTube censoring. They took down my original channel, but I got 1,800 videos on BitChute.com. Just look for Brian Rue, R-U-H-E, on BitChute.com. I got 26 playlists. One's on UFOs. So I interview people and do videos. Usually every other day I've got a new video coming out. I've been doing this since 2011. Yeah.
Well, thank you for
I
joining
got
us
the website
today.
as well, brianreed.ca. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Sorry, I got you at short notice, but good to join you. I'm interested in what Jan's doing. Very interesting. Good to meet you, Jan.
Yes. Nice to meet you. You're the only one that knows how to pronounce my name.
Yeah, Jan, not Jan. Jan's a woman's name. Jan is a European, spelled J-A-N, Jan.
Yep.
Oh, so I should be saying Yan. Do people call you that?
Yeah, Jan.
People that I tell them that's my name, they can't wrap their heads around it.
I see.
Yeah, they always think that that's a girl's name. So.
Yeah. So you just say, but do you introduce yourself as Jan or Jan?
I do, but it's such a problem. Afterwards, they see Jan. It says Jan. Why'd you tell me this other name? I said no. I said listen. Okay. That's names of presidents, emperors, and kings that had this name. And he said, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't. Yes, but that's a girl's name. So I've given up.
I understand. Sure. Well,
it's pronounced like Y. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jan, tell people how to get in contact with you, including Brian. Brian has the next show, but I'm sure in the future he could book you over there if you'd like. As long as you make our Tuesday shows.
Get in touch with you.
Okay, so
sure.
the website is www.project1947.com.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, it's huge. My email is project1947@earthlink.net.
Okay.
And so my landline is 860-546-9135. And I get calls on that from all over the world, so 2 o'clock, it doesn't bother me, but 2 o'clock in the morning, it takes a little while to get to the phone. But I get 2 o'clock in the morning from Australia all the time.
So this is pretty much your full-time job, isn't it, now that you've retired from the government?
Yes,
Jan?
this is it. I'm trying to get all this stuff scanned and in digital media before I pass away, hopefully, so it's a race.
Right. Well, we'll have these shows here, and I'll do my best to keep alive myself, so we'll have these. And hopefully we're going to find some way to keep these going after we're gone. So oral and the hard copy too, folks. So he's been working diligently all over the world doing hard copies. So, and we have all these groups. We're in an alliance, and Ahmad and I call it the Allied Command Org, and he's writing us a bi-monthly. So Jan would like to promote you in that as well. And hopefully we're going to grow this year. I'm literally looking forward to 2020 and us all working together. And I call it the ACO, but I've got another group, Soulness, not Soulless group, and dealing with afterlife and my near-death experiences. But other than the soul or what happens when we die, that's my first love, out-of-body experience, being actualized. And the second one is extraterrestrials and those beings that have always come and visited us here. Just depends on your level of filters and perceptions from what we're hearing in consciousness these days. So stay tuned. This UFO Association is based on UFO in the old time unidentified flying objects, but we also call them flying saucers, and nowadays UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena. So stay tuned, people. And right now we've got Jan Aldrich, and of Connecticut with us, and he's an old timer, and he has does done a wonderful job of introducing us to all groups with his Project 1947, CUCOS, FUFOR, MUFON. Now, what was FUFOR again? So, because we've got that listed here.
Fund for UFO Research, and they used to collect money and try to do research with with grants and things, or also give prizes to people that had done helped ufology. So I got the Isabel Davis Prize one year, and that's my heroine right there. That's my mentor. So that was quite nice. It came with a little bit of money too, so that helped too.
Congratulations, that's right. And Jan will keep helping us remember those people such as himself that have been wonderful archivists, and hopefully he can, maybe next week we can get your other friend with NICAP to come on, and maybe he'll answer us, and if not next week at 4 Eastern, folks, 4 to 6, we'll try him maybe the week after. But we'll keep doing what we're doing, Jan, and helping you any way we can. And Brian Rue of Canada, RUHE, and he's fixing to go do his show. So, Brian, have a wonderful show, and we'll look forward to having you back on our show. And you keep hanging in there.
Thanks for TJ.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Jan. We appreciate everything, and we'll see you next week, okay?
Bye.
Bye.